The engine cut out with a final, sickening sputter. The car door slammed and the cold air rushed in. "Get out!" Dad's voice was steady, unbothered, almost bored. "You're wasting our gas." It was 2 a.m. on a deserted highway. Just us, the desert, and the stars. Mom leaned over from the passenger seat, her lips curling into a mock smile. "Let the animals freeze." I didn't flinch, not this time. But my son, 7 years old, barely awake, looked at me with wide eyes, trembling from the cold, but I wasn't worried about him. I was thinking about the last few years. About the years of manipulation, the insults wrapped in fake concern, the gaslighting, the lies. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was beyond anger. I was methodical. I looked at my parents, at the two faces that should have cared for me, that should have protected my son. Instead, they tossed us out like trash. Dad gave me one last glance, his expression unreadable. "You should have crawled back into the womb you came from." I made sure they never laughed again. I remember the day I first realized how cold they were, how detached. It was after my divorce, when I'd lost everything. But they didn't offer comfort. Instead, they told me I'd brought it upon myself. "You didn't listen," they said. "You're always too proud." I didn't know what to do then. I was too broken, too scared. But something changed after that night. I started watching, listening. I learned the cracks in their perfect facade. The first sign? The subtle shifts in their behavior. Dad would cancel plans at the last minute, always with some excuse. Mom would make passive-aggressive comments about my son, calling him too much trouble. And then came the day I found the bank statements, hidden deep in the drawer, like a secret. They had been siphoning off my savings, little bits at a time. Not enough to notice, not at first, but enough to break me. I confronted them. They laughed, like it was a joke. "You've always been dramatic, honey," Mom said. And that's when I realized I had been nothing to them. Not the daughter who fought to get their approval, not the mother trying to raise her child in a broken world. I had been an afterthought, a nuisance to be discarded when convenient. And then the final betrayal came. They told me straight to my face that they had nothing for me anymore. They were done. Done with me, done with my son. But they didn't know what I'd learned in silence. By the time they kicked us out on that highway, I already had a plan. I hadn't come empty-handed. I kept my head down, avoided contact, and built my strategy in the dark. I secured my finances under anonymous accounts. I made calls no one knew about. When my parents bragged about their latest vacation home or luxury car, I smiled and nodded, but I was building. I had the documents, the bank accounts, the photographs, the threats, everything. I knew where they were weakest. It wasn't their money, no. Their pride was their real weakness. Dad's business dealings were more shady than he ever admitted. I'd spent years gathering records, hacking emails, and piecing together conversations he thought were forgotten. I had proof, enough to take him down. And when I stepped out of the car, leaving my son behind for a second, I knew that the real game was about to begin. 2 days later, I sent an anonymous tip to the authorities. It was clean, no trace. I watched from the shadows as the first crack formed. The thing about revenge is, it's never loud. It doesn't need to be. It's the quiet patience, the knowing when to pull the thread, when to unravel the lie. And when my phone rang 3 days later, I knew it was finally happening. I listened to them scream through the phone. It wasn't anger that gripped me, it was satisfaction. They were begging now, begging for the things I had once begged for: respect, love, a place in their lives. But I wasn't going to give them that. I was smarter than that now. Mom and Dad showed up at my doorstep like nothing had happened. They were clean, neat, smiles on their faces. "We need to talk," Dad said, his voice low, almost menacing. I let them in. I let them think they had control. "You've been good to us, right?" Dad asked. "You're going to help us, aren't you?" And I let him squirm, let him sweat. I slid a folder across the table. "I'm sorry, but I'm done with you." They glanced at the papers, their faces draining of color. What is this?" Mom stammered. "The bills, the fraudulent claims, the real ownership of the house. Your company's illegal dealings." The house? The luxury they'd flaunted? It was all in my name. And the real punch? I'd given the authorities everything. The illegal sales, the tax evasion, the fraud. I watched them crumble. When the authorities arrived at their door, the first time I saw my father cry, it was like a weight lifting off my shoulders.